This film will be entitled How USA Won the Vietnam War. In our part of the world, that is Poland, and Poland, Russia, all these countries, it's customary to believe that that America lost in Vietnam. The fact is that it was just opposite, and the Americans won in Vietnam, but the situation changes to the to negative after the war. So just to recapitulate what happened during the Vietnam War. First, it wasn't the American war, of course, it was a French war. The French colonialists were faced with great nationalistic Vietnamese resistance. They tried to make a classic war that is just blitzkrieg like pushes and trying to circulate the enemy and force them to capitulate and to surrender, and they tried this and they were surrounded themselves at Dien Bien Phu. It was the time when the French have already they had their means stretched all over the world. All the old colonies were revolting, so they had to move those troops to Algeria and the other endangered places. And the Americans were in this time already leaders of this conflict on the side of capitalists, so to speak. So they were involved in this war since the incident in which the American ship was playing a part, and it was shot at by the Vietnamese, probably because they thought it was a French ship. So they were from this time engaged into the conflict, and they were driving the conflict into totally different fashion as the French did. The American soldiers didn't want to die, so they have organized camps, and they were building new camps deeper and deeper into the enemy territory. And they were not using big excursions into the enemy territory, but they were using small crack troops. And those small units were usually, not usually, but very often forced to, were annihilated or endangered by the Vietnamese guerrilla and Vietnamese army. And they were, so the war wasn't going too well during the presidency of Lyndon Johnson, but then of course Richard Nixon took his place, and he wanted to change the course of the war rapidly, and he started a mass bombing of the northern Vietnam, and also on Laos, which was sympathizing with the Vietnamese and were organizing of course reinforcements and supplies for the North Vietnamese army. So both bombing North Vietnam, bombing Laos brought very fast good effects, and the Americans really won the conflict, and the Vietnamese from North had to respect it. But they of course they were not of course intending to. And when the Americans left, that is true, they have armed heavily the southern Vietnam, but it proved to not be enough, and the South Vietnam was invaded successfully by northern Vietnamese. There were many very grim stories from that time. The northern Vietnamese communists were behaving like animals, but we can mention one story about the journalist from German Democratic Republic, from Communist Germany. They were sympathizing, of course, with the Vietnamese Vietnamese troops, but they were murdered as American spies or something like this. So and so this is one of those stories. So to one of those mixed tragicomic situation, I could mention another situation in which